March 8th, 1984. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Rena Martin Reyes. Mrs. Reyes, where were you born?
I was born in Lequire, Oklahoma,
And when's your birthday?
July 27, 1911.
Okay. Who was your father?
My father was William Martin. I would say they knew him as William Martin II. His father's name was also William Martin.
Hmm.
And
Who was your mother?
my mother was Charlotte Folsom Martin. Her birthday was December 27, 1884.
Okay.
My dad's birthday was May 1800. Was it 1800? No, 1880. 1880.
Okay. Were they both from Indian Territory?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
They married and lived in Indian Territory. I don't know what year they were married, but anyway, after the allotment, they went to Lequire, Oklahoma to live. They were married here in Stigler.
Mm-hmm. Now, were both your parents Choctaw?
Both Choctaws,
Okay, now are you full-blood Choctaw?
Well, we've always considered ourselves full blood, but my mother's father was a descendant of Nathaniel Folsom, who there's a long history back of that. I have several volumes on the Folsom family. They have a family association, and I guess every Folsom in the United States listed in these books. But her father was Nathaniel Folsom. I mean, her grandfather. Her grandfather was white. He was a descendant of John Folsom, who first settled and came over on a ship from England. And there is a town in England that's named Folsom. And the family association planned to go back or send several back there this summer for a special dedication in memory of the Folsom town.
So Folsom is an English name?
Evidently it is.
Mm-hmm. Have you heard any stories about Nathaniel Folsom?
Not other than I don't know which one came to Oklahoma with there were three brothers. There were three brothers and one, Nathaniel, and married a couple Choctaw sisters. And then they called him the father of all the Choctaw Folsoms.
Mm-hmm. Now, who was David Folsom?
David Folsom. There are several David Folsom.
The one I'm thinking of, I think, was chief in the 1820s.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't know much about him. There is some history in the Folsom books, but I haven't gone that far back. And her grandfather and grandmother, Rachel and Solomon Folsom, are listed as the early settlers on the 1860 Indian roll. And that was my mother's father's parent or grandparent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then on her mother's side, my grandmother Scott, grandmother Perry, she was Perry. Her background is French. And her father was Bowman Perry, one of the early Methodist ministers in this area. And
what's his name?
Bowen.
Bowen.
B-O-L. They spell it several different ways. I don't know whether Boland or Boland. We always spell it Boland Perry. He was a Methodist missionary, and there, if in Ted Hall's book on Oklahoma Indian Territory days, on page 207, it records Boland Perry as on the assumption that Sandboy Circuit included Whitefield Community. T.B. Hall listed preachers known to have served from 1868 through 1890. Boland Perry was number 1. He was a Methodist minister, and he married a Nancy LeFleur, and she was of French extraction.
Yeah. Do you have any documents or photographs or papers on this Reverend Perry?
No, we don't. None of us do, except that it is listed with a Methodist history, Methodist historical, where they're missionaries. He's listed with their missionaries.
Do you know which Folsom came over the trail from Mississippi to Indian Territory?
I don't. Well, I have no idea who came over the trail, but evidently, Grandpa Solomon and Rachel came in 1860, or before that. That's when the census was taken, in 1860. Evidently, they were a year before some of that.
Have you heard any stories about the Trail of Tears, about the removal?
No, not directly. Indirectly, I have.
What have you heard?
Just some of the little incidents, like how they had no time to bury their dead if they were on a fast move for the day, or some reason or other that they had to keep moving. But if they camped out and there was any death, they had buried their dead. And that's all I've ever heard, is that the soldiers had whipped them, but that's not first-hand story. I mean, it's just more or less a common story among the Indians.
Okay, as a little girl, what kind of chores did you do around the house?
Well, I did just very little if I could get by with. No, Dad never did expect us girls. Of course, there were 5. There were 10 in our family, actually, but not at one time. There were. I had 3 sisters. 3 that died before me, and then when I was born, I had a brother and a sister die that were younger than me, and then the others came along: Rosalie, Vivian, Emmeline, and William, another William, and there were, out of 10 children, 5 are living. And we didn't do any more than just carry in wood or help with the dishes, and my mother did most of the work. And it was not heavy work for any of us.
What about laundry and?
Well, we had a well on the porch, and I was always doing my mother a favor by drawing the water, because I loved to hop up and down on that well box, and I'd step up and step down and step up and step down. I've had more fun drawing water that way. And I'd draw tubs of water for her and fill the wash pot where she would boil her clothes. And then I would go off to school. When I'd come back, well, she would have part of the washing done, and then have my lunch ready. And I would go back to school, and she would finish her washing. And I love to go out in the woods and pick up what they call washwood. And that's just picking up limbs and scraps under the trees and whatnot. You know, more or less clearing off land, I guess. And picking up sticks like that, making fire under the
Okay,
big
now
pot.
washwood.
Huh?
Tell me, what makes a stick washwood? Is it any different from regular firewood?
No, we did use regular firewood. It's wood that would burn, but it was mostly just anything that we could pick up that would burn. But our regular wood for the fireplace was cut in, I'd say about 18-inch length, and piled in the yard, and we would carry in enough for the evening. And Dad usually had some, as far as I can remember, he always took in an orphan or someone that needed a home and let them work, just live there and do chores like that. That's when the girls didn't have to do it. That's when somebody else was there to do it. And we did it in between.
What about making soap?
What?
Making soap. Did your mother make soap?
Yes, and I made soap too while I was in California.
How'd you do it?
I used regular lye and waste fat, shortening, grease and stuff like that, because it was hard to get rid of that stuff, and I just made soap out of it. I didn't do any. You didn't have to do any cooking on that, but you had to be careful what kind of utensils you used in it, because it would eat aluminum. It would just eat it right out. And
how much lye would you use to how much grease? Or
I had directions to go by. It was on the lye can deal, and I used that. I followed that. But Mom used to make it the same way.
Where'd you start school?
I started to school when I was about 5 years old. I don't know, I can't even recall that I was so anxious to go to school, but my mother told me that I was just dying to go to school. I wanted to go to school every day that I couldn't go before I started. And she talked to the principal, who was Rob Gabbard. Everybody in Haskell County, I guess, knows Rob Gabbard. And he was the principal at that time. And he said, well, there was, the school wasn't too crowded, and that they could start me to school if anybody made any objection to it or had any objection to it, that I enrolled with the understanding that I would, have to come out. But nobody ever made any complaints or took any made any issue of it. So I started school, and I went to, his wife was a teacher, Mrs. Maud Gabbard. She taught the chart class. I started in chart class.
What kind of class?
What?
What kind of class?
Chart.
What's that?
It was like a projection screen, but it had all the beautiful colors of balloons and what have you on it, and then the sentences written out beside that. I am a blue balloon, and I'm a red balloon, and all that. And then she could turn it over, and maybe there'd be figures on it, and we'd have to work on that. And then when I went to my first primer, we call it primer, I guess we call it primer now. But That was a little yellow book, beautiful yellow book I can remember, and it had a string of forget-me-nots down one side and across the bottom. A single string of forget-me-nots, blue forget-me-nots, and that also had I am this or I am that, and simple sentences. And from then on, I remember sitting on, we had a what they call the recitation bench, and she'd call one class at a time up there, and we'd sit on the bench in front of her desk, and she would teach us from there.
How many students were in the school?
We had a 3-room school, and I would say about maybe 20 pupils in this what we call the primary room. Primary, and then the other next room would be 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And I went through Lequire School through the 11th grade.
Oh, is that the name of the school? Lequire
Same school. I went through all 3 rooms.
Who was Lequire named after?
It was named after Mr. Ham Lequire. Ham and Aunt Georgia Lequire.
Who was he?
They were the first settlers there from, I believe they were from Arkansas. Most everybody came from Arkansas. They may have come up through Georgia, from Georgia or someplace like that.
And was he Choctaw?
What? No, these were white people. And she was there when my mother married and left Stigler and went there. She was the first lady that Mom got acquainted with. She was a missionary Baptist. My mother was a Baptist too, so that made the common meeting.
Right. What kind of work did your father do?
My dad did a little bit of farming. He rented out his places. We've had I don't know what they call 3rd and 4th, but some of the farmers that came in there did. I think they called it 3rd and 4th, and Dad would they would get the 3 rows of everything, and then Dad got the 4th.
Because they were sharecroppers?
I guess that's what you would call it, but they didn't really call them sharecroppers, but that more or less what it was. We've had several families on that place.
Do you speak Choctaw?
No, I don't. I think that was about the time when they thought getting rid of the Choctaw language and assimilating into the public life.
Were you ever allowed to speak Choctaw in school?
Oh no, I never had that desire. I never had the desire to speak Choctaw. I don't know why. My mother and dad always, when they didn't want us kids to know what they were talking about, they would talk Choctaw. But we never did learn it. And I was surprised when I came back from California that Emmeline could talk Choctaw as well as she did.
Now that's your sister.
That's Emmeline Jordan.
Yeah.
We were all surprised that she could talk as well as she did.
Okay. After the 11th grade, where'd you go?
I stayed out of school one year. I had wanted to go to a boarding school. I wanted to go to Wheelock, and I wanted to go real bad because I hadn't been around any Indians at all other than just a few relatives and the minister, Choctaw minister, and his family. And I guess we were the only Indian families in town, is the minister's family and our family. And I wanted to go to Wheelock so bad. I've heard, well, my mother and my dad both went to boarding school. My mother finished, I think, 3rd grade at Wheelock. No, at Tuskhoma. She finished Tuskhoma. She finished about 3rd grade. And Dad, I guess they had a hard time keeping him in school. He was always running off and coming home. And he went to school at Jones Academy. What time he did go, I don't think he even finished 3rd grade.
Did your mother ever talk about Tuskhoma?
No, other than just some of the friends that she'd met. And she did tell me some stories about, I guess they were personal stories though, about herself. And then later in life, she got her younger sister and a cousin all ready to sew for them and deloused them and got them all ready for Tuskhoma. They went to school in Tuskhoma.
They did. When did that school close, Tuskhoma?
I don't know when it did close. I don't know. And then from that experience of wanting to go to Wheelock, my dad didn't want me to go to Indian school, and I never did know why. But anyway, we clashed, and he wanted me to come to Stigler, and I didn't want to come to Stigler. I'd been in public school, and I wanted to see what the boarding school was like. And so I was stubborn enough to stay home one year. I stayed out of school one year. And Mr. E.O. Clark was Indian attorney, Choctaw attorney here in town. And I came over here and talked to him. I don't know who ever told me he would help me or anything. A lot of this stuff that I just followed my instinct, I guess you would call it, and I guess I must have heard that he was Choctaw attorney, because I came over and I talked to him, and he got a place for me in Chilocco. And my dad told me that if I went off to boarding school, I didn't need to expect any help from them whatsoever. So I told Mr. Clark all my problems, all my trouble, and he got me a place, and he even got my ticket to the Indian agency. And
what'd you have to do to get into Chilocco?
I don't know, just enroll, and since he was an attorney for the Choctaw tribe, he enrolled me. I didn't even sign my name. I didn't have anything to do with it. He told me when to be here, to leave on the train, and I left on the Midland Valley and went to Muskogee, stayed overnight, got on another train, and went to Arkansas City. And they had someone from the school meet the train there.
Now, Chilocco was how far from Arkansas City?
Oh, not. I know that's where we did our shopping. That was the nearest town. And I don't know just exactly how many miles it was.
And when did you first go to Chilocco?
In September 1929. And I spent 2 years there. And that's where I met and spent some time with relatives there. And leaving here in 29, I met Sarah McGillberry and Cecil. They were on their way from here going to Chilocco, but I didn't know anything about that. See, that's the first time I'd ever seen them, was on the train. And I had met Adam Christie. He escorted them to Muskogee so that they would, and saw that they got on the train. Well, there was nobody escorting me. I was going there all by myself. And so I just joined the group and went with them. And Cecil was there the 2 years that I was there, and I don't know how long she was there after I left. And I don't know how long Sarah was there after I left.
What did you study at Chilocco?
Let's see. We had English, physics, chemistry, business agriculture, and I think English was our most important subject. I didn't get very much out of chemistry or physics, but I do know, and I've often wondered how I did it, was I sat in the front seat. Of course, I have always had a hearing problem, and I managed to get up front where I could hear what was going on, what the instructor had to say. And it seems to me that when we would have a test, it would be on something that we'd had the day before, not in the past, or any of our studies, say a week or two ago. It would always be on some question, something that we had studied the day before. And I can remember it that long. I guess I made good grades. I mean, I can remember making 100 in physics a couple times, and I don't know, to this day, I don't know what the answers were, or what the questions were, or where it would serve me any good at all. And chemistry, I couldn't even remember to answer a question same day. I couldn't remember formulas, and I think just a few like sugar and salt and gold and sulfuric acid, things like that I could remember. But outside of that, I didn't know what.
Now, did you live in the dormitory there?
If we lived in a dormitory, there were two girls' dormitory and two boys' dormitory, and I lived in. Well, I think they were divided by grades mostly, or maybe age. I don't know, but anyway, I think 9th, 10th, maybe 11th. I know I went there. I was in the 11th grade, and I was in Home 4, and that's where Miss McCormick was our girls' advisor.
Now, what do you mean by dorm 4?
Well, the boys' dormitories was 1 and 2, and the younger girls was 3, and ours was, I guess we were the oldest, I don't know, but we were the last dormitory, 4th. And then the upper grades were there, the 11th and 12th grades were there.
Now, were all the girls in one building, 3 and 4?
No, 3 was over across the campus, and 4 was over by the administration and the school building.
Okay. Did you have a private room?
Yes. Well, it wasn't private, semi-private, but we did have separate rooms, and sometimes there would be as many as 4 girls in a room, and if you were lucky, you'd have 3, and if you were still luckier than that, you would have 2 in a room. And I think Miss McCormick tried to have all the officers in rooms of 2.
How many girls were in your room?
One year, there were 4 of us in one room. And for the second year.
How big were the rooms?
Oh, about the size of this kitchen.
What about 12 by 14 or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And they all open up into the hallway, and the doors were never allowed to be closed. They were open at all time.
How were the rooms furnished?
What?
How were the rooms furnished?
We had good beds, and well, I would imagine there was something like single hospital beds, something like that. We all had single beds, had our own. Well, we had to share closets, clothes closets, We had a dresser. We had to go downstairs. All the laundry and bathing was done downstairs, and our regular bath day was on Wednesday and Saturday. Wednesday and Saturday, and then we didn't do any laundry in the house, in the building at all. That's when I learned to love to have somebody else do my laundry.
Where'd you do the laundry?
Well, we changed beds, and they were all gathered up and taken to a common laundry, and that was located over the back of the dining room somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Kitchen, dining room area.
Did you have washing machines?
I don't know how they washed clothes. I never did work in the laundry. I don't know how they washed them.
Okay.
I imagine they had big machines.
Yeah. What kind of work did you do at Chilocco? What were your duties?
Well, the first year, gosh, I can't recall what I did the first year. I guess I just learned my way around.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because I'd never been in a place like that, and we had to leave the building at a certain time to get to the dining room at a certain time, and we did everything in big groups. And the second year I was there, I was made an officer, and my duties was by assignment by Miss McCormick. Sometimes we'd have hall duties, and sometimes we'd have to take a group of girls to the store and back. Mm-hmm. We had a little store on campus, and I thought it was a beautiful place. I loved it.
Where'd you take your meals?
What?
Where did you take your meals?
Oh, in a common dining room. Big dining room. It was between home 3 and home 4, and the boys had to walk the furthest to get to the dining room. But we all ate in the same dining room. I remember one detail that I had was getting up early in the morning and going over to the kitchen and frying eggs for breakfast. And I never saw such huge stoves before in my life. I hadn't been into very many restaurants, so I didn't know what that was like. But anyway, we would have great big grills to fry our eggs on. And to me, that was more fun to have to break all those eggs.
How long did you have to cook eggs?
We did 3 or 4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, but we didn't have to do it every day because we didn't have eggs for breakfast every day. That was kind of special. Okay. And I never did have any dining room duties. I never did do any dining room duty. And we had our home economics classes. And some took nursing and some took home economics. I took home economics. And we did sewing and cooking in our home economics department. Mm-hmm. And then we had practice cottage, which is about, I'd say about a quarter of a mile from the main building. But we used to love to take that long walk out to the practice cottage. And different classes would have different times to practice.
Now, what's a practice cottage?
That was, well, one was for the instructor, and the other two one was for a classroom, one was for a kitchen, because we didn't stay overnight over there, and we didn't have any bedrooms. But that's where we practiced, I can remember child care training. We had that, and we had first aid training and home care, like the Red Cross gives, like that. And we had we would prepare our evening meals there, and that's where we learned to work out our menus and order groceries and things like that. Mm-hmm. And we put it into practice there. We did the cooking and everything, and we could eat our meals there in the evenings when we were. I think we had about 6 weeks of that each year. 2 years.
Did you have to wear a uniform?
Uh, yes.
What did they look like?
They were just simple blue looking chambray, and they were just as simple as they could be, and we wore a little leather belt, government issue, GI issue, and that's all we had. And then we wore black socks and black shoes.
How long were the uniforms?
What?
How long were the uniforms?
They were pretty decent length. They weren't, long and overdone.
About mid-calf?
What?
About
Yeah.
mid-calf?
Yeah, maybe that's. Miss McCormick was kind of old-fashioned, and she would allow us to. She always wore her dress down at the ankle, and she was a slender-built woman, and jokingly, a lot of them called her Miss Broom. I never did call her that because I had a little more respect for her because I was afraid of her. She was disciplinarian to me.
What was she like, Miss McCormick?
I got really next to her after I became an officer, and she would call on me a lot, and I learned that Cecil was the same way. This cousin of mine that was, she was my roommate at one year, the first year I was there, and I remember a girl getting sick in our room, and I don't remember Cecil being my roommate. But anyway, we were describing the same incident, and she was talking about May Bob getting sick, and I went and reported it to Miss McCormick. She came back into our room, and our room was right next to her office, or next to her room, I guess. But we never did know why she placed us in those rooms. We were assigned those rooms at all. We were on first floor and right next to the office. And I went in and reported this girl sick. She came in, and then I had to go right on to class. And Cecil was still there in the room, and Miss McCormick gave her orders to do things for May Bob, and they eventually had to take her to the hospital. But I had remembered that Cecil had to come in and take orders.
How tall were the dormitories? How many floors in the dorm?
We had, I think, 4 floors. 3 floors in the basement. That's what it was, 3 floors in the basement. I just loved those old buildings. Yeah. I just thought those were just...
What were they made of? What were the buildings made of?
I believe they were natural stone squares. Yeah. Not squares, but, kind of long.
Did you say that Miss McCormick made the run of '89?
Yes, she would set me in leave me in the office in charge of some girls that she had punished, and she'd have to run an errand, and instead of sending me, she would go and leave me in charge of these punished girls. And there was one girl that I dreaded to be responsible for. And I would sit down and I'd start telling her about Miss McCormick, how nice she was and what all she did. And she had to be the way she was. But when you get acquainted with her and got her off to herself, she could talk and just be real nice. But when she come downstairs and got in front of that group of girls, she was stern. I mean, she looked stern. I knew she wasn't. I knew that it was her job. And I got along with her just fine.
Mm-hmm. What did she say about the run of '89? What did she do?
She said she and her sister alone came on that run, and she just described the wagons and the horses that they had and how they had camped ready to make that run the next day. I guess some of them went across there before the time set, where they got the name Sooners.
Yeah.
I think that's where the.
Did she say where she made the run from? What point?
No, she didn't. She didn't say just where.
What'd she say about camping out, making the run? How did they camp?
She had. They had their own wagon, so she and her sister camped together. There. But she didn't She didn't go into details to tell her what they did privately.
Now, what about the run?
And she said that as far as they could see, there were just wagons, and it went in a sweep with the horses on a dead run. I'm not sure. I believe she said one of them rode a horse. She and her sister were together, and I believe she said that one of them rode a horse. But she never did say where she staked out her claim or anything. Never did get that far.
I was going to say, did she stake a claim, or did she ever say?
She did. She did.
Where was it?
She didn't say where it was.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me that she was from around El Reno somewhere. I never did know where she came from, where she lived as a girl. But I think it was around El Reno. But I thought she was born and raised right in Chilocco.
Okay. Can you tell me just what your average day was like at Chilocco? What time you'd get up in the morning?
We got up, I would say about 6:30. Cleaned our room. We got dressed, cleaned our rooms, and our rooms were just spotless. No dust in there, because while we were gone, somebody went through there. An officer was detailed to go through the rooms and inspect them. And we would go to breakfast. When we would come back, while we were lined up downstairs to get our details, they would read the detail to us for the day. And if there was any special announcement that Miss McCormick had to make, she'd come down and make it. And there were officers in charge of each company, and there were 4 companies in our dormitory. And they had company A, B, C, and D. And D was the smallest, shortest group of girls. And A was the largest. I was in company B. And then from there, those that had to go to school in the morning, well, we were dismissed, and we would go upstairs and take care of what few things that we had to do. We had a little time on our hand there, and then we would go. Different kids would go out on different details. Some of them were detailed to the dining room, and some to the laundry and different places. Some of the girls worked for the employees, and we would work, whatever our detail was, we would work in the morning and go to school in the afternoon, or vice versa. If we'd go to school first, we'd come home in the afternoon. But in my senior year, we would go to our different classes. We didn't have time for details anywhere. But if we were officers, we became officers right after school. We had to look after the other girls. And then we would have socials. Boys and girls would be allowed to meet in the gymnasium and have dances, and we had class parties, band concerts, and one of the most thrilling thing, I think, was when we'd have band parade on Saturday. To me, that was a beautiful thing, because they had the marching band, And we had football games and basketball games. And we were busy. They kept us busy practically all the time. And we had free time from 4 o'clock, 4:30. Some of the girls had to go on their detail, like going to the dining room and getting it ready for the evening meal. And the rest of us would have study time. We could study or visit or had free time. I remember one time going out on the lake, back of the girls' dormitory, home 4, and there was a lake between home 4 and the hospital. We had our own hospital there, doctor and staff, and I remember, I don't know why that canoe was there, but there was a canoe there, and I had never been on a lake. I'd never been in. I was afraid of water. I couldn't swim. And I went out there and got a load of girls in that boat, and I rowed them across the lake, and we went over on the other side. We were on the hospital side. We weren't supposed to be over there, I don't think. I think we were supposed to go over there and come right back. But when we got over there, the whistle blew for dinner, for the evening meal. And the girls got out, ran down the lake, side of the lake, and crossed the bridge. And there I was left with a boat, the canoe. I don't remember how I got back to the dining room. I knew Miss McCormick was going to be after me, though, if I didn't get there. But I think I must have made it in time to get in on the tail end of the line that was going to the dining room, because I got there. I didn't miss my dinner. But I don't know whatever happened to that canoe. I can remember we put on a pageant, or Miss McPherson, I believe was her name. She was a music instructor there. And they put on a pageant, and I've often wondered, and I don't know why I didn't think any more about it then, but they had a pageant that they put on in the evening, and I don't even know what it was all about, except that I know the part that I had. I was part of a group, and I carried a cradle board on my back, and they had it at night. They had campfires along the lake there, and it was put on. The lake was the background.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a beautiful thing. It started from one end of the lake and ended up at the other end. And all I can remember is that this cousin of mine, Milton Perry, and Oscar McCurtain, just like to died laughing because they saw me with this cradle on my I never thought anybody was going to laugh. I thought I was just taking part in a play. I always remember that part because they laughed. I don't remember whether Cecil had any part in it or not. Yeah. But anyway, that was one pageant, and I don't remember what it was called. And I just wondered if that might have been the Trail of Tears. You know, just a small history of it. I just often wondered. I don't know how I'd find out.
What about the food and water supply at the school?
The what?
The food and water. Where'd you get your water?
I think we had our own tanks, water supply.
I mean, was it well water, or was it brought in, or?
Evidently, gosh, I don't even know. Never thought of it. I just know we had a big tank that had Chilocco written on it, and I knew that that's where the water came from, but I don't know where the water came from to fill that tank. And Newkirk was our where they dropped our mail off.
What about food?
Oh, our food was real good, but it wasn't. That's where I learned to eat hardtack. Somebody mentioned hardtack in the brew yesterday. That's where I learned what hardtack was. But that wasn't a steady diet. That was just more or less a treat, I
Yeah.
guess, because we didn't have it often.
Did you raise most of your food there, or was
Yes,
it?
we had agricultural. The boys did farming,
Yeah.
practice farming, and they raised a lot of food. And
Did the girls ever work out in the fields?
the boys worked out in the fields. We did the girls that never were out in the field. It was the boys farming.
Okay. What does the name Chilocco mean?
I never did know what that meant. I don't know what language it is or anything.
How many different tribal groups were at Chilocco?
Oh, I couldn't venture to say. There were just, I know I had a roommate who was from Montana, and we had girls there from North Dakota and New Mexico. I had a roommate from Santa Fe, New Mexico. That's what I wanted when I left Lequire. I wanted to reach out and get acquainted with the outside world. I knew I wasn't going to grow up and live in Lequire. I don't know where I got that urge or that feeling, but I was getting out of there just as fast as I could get out of there. Because I always envied Mom and Dad, and I've often asked them why they left Stigler to go over and live at Lequire. I said, whatever possessed you to come out here to live?
So,
and that was their allotment that took them there. They never did tell me that, though. I figured it out later because we lived on their allotment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you graduate from Chilocco?
Yes,
Tell me about the commencement exercises.
Well, it was just like any other commencement exercise. We had our regular program, and
who gave the speech, the commencement speech?
Yeah, we had valedictorian in our class was he was a short little guy. His name was Jackson. There were two brothers there, Terrell and I can remember Terrell, but I can't remember his younger brother. But he was the valedictorian. And gosh, I don't know how many graduated. There were quite a number of us graduated.
What year was that?
And 31.
1931.
May 31. During my senior year, we went to Wichita, Kansas to take a civil service examination. And we used to have, Miss Lyford, a representative from Washington, D.C., used to be, my biggest thrill was to meet her because she was in charge of, I guess, the home economics department. And she would come to Chilocco, and she would tell us all about the job possibilities and whatnot, and what trainings to take for certain jobs and what have you. And I went in to take, when we had our examination, I guess it was made out especially for the boarding schools, because the questions related mostly to the dining room, as a dining room matron, and that would, you could branch off of that, work in restaurants or motels or hotels, and maybe go into home nursing or something like that, branch off. And then questions about group living and the discipline for group living and how you would handle certain problems and whatnot. I can't recall how many. I think there were about 5 of us that passed the examination. And I can only remember one girl. She was my roommate, my classmate, Willa Mae Hunter. I ended up in Shiprock, New Mexico. I had an offer to go to South Dakota. And by the time I got my answer back, that somebody else had taken that. They had filled that job. So I was assigned to Shiprock, New Mexico. And just across the line, just a short, I guess maybe about 60, 75 miles from there was another classmate, a classmate of mine, Wilma Mae Hunter. She had passed the test. And I don't know who the other three girls were. I just knew that the two of us had passed. We
What'd
got
you do
our
at Shiprock?
I was a matron, and that's where my group living and organizing work for groups.
Now, was it an Indian school out there?
Yeah.
What was the name of it?
It was a Navajo. That was called the boarding school, but it was Shiprock Agency, and the school was located right there. And they had two dormitories there, a girls' dormitory and a boys' dormitory. I worked in the girls' dormitory.
What were your duties there as matron?
It's just like somebody being in a home, only you dealt with a group. You had to detail kids to say, well, just like dormitory living, they had dormitories there too. And it was just a duplicate of Chilocco, the way I had lived, and I'd have to organize these groups. We had to do our housework and laundry work. Well, we had common laundry too, but we had certain days to pick up our linen, and so had linen day or laundry day. And we had to check out youngsters, see if they needed medical attention, and take them to the hospital. We had a regular hospital at Shiprock. That was they had two groups of, they had two separate schools, more or less. They had camp school, and then they had the boarding school. They just called it Shiprock Boarding School. And then the other school that was later, was built later, was called camp school. And they had about the same number of pupils at each school. And these youngsters came in off the reservation. And we had to keep them there.
Were they allowed to speak Navajo at the school?
The kids did. I allowed them to. I thought, well, that's their language. But when they spoke to me, I knew they had to speak English. They wanted anything. And they at school, they had teachers from all over. We had teachers from North Carolina, Alabama, different places. They were civil service teachers.
Did you go there in 31?
I went there in September 31, and I stayed there, I think, 4 years. And I never missed a summer coming back to Oklahoma. I came home every summer. I made that highway, what was it, Highway 66?
66. Yeah.
It was 66 then when I first went out there.
How did the Depression affect Shiprock School?
Well, it didn't affect the school at all. It went on as usual. But I can remember when Roosevelt declared the a bank holiday, I believe that's what it was called. And that was one day we were warned to draw out any money from the bank that we needed for that next day. You know, if there was anything that we had to have, we were to draw that out, and we were not to exchange any script or checks, write any checks or anything like that on that one day. And I don't know what, it was something about balancing something in Washington, D.C., so that hit us out there in New Mexico too, way out on the reservation.
Yeah. Now what about the food and water supply at Shiprock?
Let's see. We had running water, but I don't know where the supply was from, unless it was from the San Juan River, which was right near there. And The food was the same as any other boarding school.
I mean, was it just like Chilocco? Did the boys work out in the field, raise the crops?
They had a farmer there, and he had his helpers, and they had, I don't know whether they had a shoe shop there or not, but anyway, they had carpenter shop. The boys were trained to do carpentry. And I think they did have a shoe shop, because I remember one man that all this tanning and stuff affected his health, and he died later. And we had a band leader there who also had graduated from Chilocco years before, in the earlier days. He was an elderly man when I first met him in Shiprock. And they had regular boarding school life, just like we did. And in the summers, the children and girls did most of the sheep herding. They were sheep herders. And one summer, when I was in camp school, one of the girls that I liked real well, I could count on her for help whenever I needed to have her interpret something to one of the girls that didn't understand English too well. And I depended on her a lot, and I liked her a lot. And she went home that summer herding sheep, and came back when fall session. During the fall session, one of the girls came in and told me that she had been out herding sheep at the foot of a steep mountain, and a big rock had rolled off from the top, and they never did recover her body. That rock covered her body there she was herding sheep. And I never did want to go out and find out where it was or anything. But I just knew what they had told me. And I never shared it.
I've heard a story about Shiprock. Is there about the big rock itself? What's the legend behind that rock?
The legend was that what I had heard was that the Navajos were fleeing from, they had quite a warlike tribe, and they were always at war with somebody. Somebody was chasing them, and to escape, that this boat or ship had rescued them. And I can't recall what happened to the Navajo people, but they said that that was what was left of that ship. It turned to a stone.
What, the ship just took them away?
The Shiprock.
Yeah. What, did it take them away or what?
They brought them out on the desert. Brought them out on the desert. And that's about all I ever heard. And I didn't know that I had allowed my curiosity to die. I guess I was busy trying to find out where Farmington, New Mexico was, or get how far it was to Gallup, New Mexico, or Crown Point, and other places, because we were 98 miles out of Gallup, New Mexico, and that's where I landed when I left here to go to Shiprock. I had to get what they call the cannonball out of Gallup into Shiprock. It was going to up into Colorado, Cortez, Colorado is where that bus was going.
After Shiprock, where did you go?
I went to Crown Point. That was the eastern Navajo.
Where's that?
That was several miles, about 25, 30 miles from the highway.